Hi everyone. For those of you that missed the Movement Vote launch call last night, here's a rundown of the plan that we shared. I'm going to run through it now. So, we're going to run through the stakes of the moment that we're in, a bit about why we've chosen this strategy and what the plan involves, and then we'll walk through some of the tactics and resources that Tipping Point is making available for grassroots groups. And we'll finish off with how you can get involved where you live. So, we did a bit of an interactive exercise to find out the views of the people and groups that were in the call last night. If you want to take part in this, just hover your phone over the QR code, give us your views. We'd love to hear kind of what's most important to you. But the basic point is that from the results of our Mentimeter exercise, but also just pick any headlines at random, and you'll see that this election that's just been called for the 4th of July is pivotal, not just for us in the UK, but for billions of people worldwide. Not exaggerating to say it's probably one of the most consequential elections of our time, with some of the crises that we're facing, whether it's the climate crisis, what's going on in Gaza, or Ukraine, or any number of issues around the world that really, really need urgent attention. And whoever gets elected is going to have to deliver on those. So the point is that we don't think this is one that anyone who's involved in movements for justice can afford to sit out. It's a really key opportunity to make our voices heard on the issues that matter to us. And it's not just people in the UK that are going to the polls this year. Yesterday it was South Africa, but there were 4 billion people getting a chance to elect new leaders this year. And they are going to be, the politicians holding responsibility for delivering what we want. All of these issues, from poverty to Palestine, workers' rights to climate justice and migrant justice, and many more issues that I know you all care about deeply, are on the ballot for us on the 4th of July. And as they stand today, 5 weeks out from polling day, all the polls seem to suggest that we're on track for a new government to be formed by the Labour Party. The question at this stage is, what scale of majority does Labour get, and what message does that majority that they get, the number of seats, send them about what the country actually wants? It's probably not too controversial to suggest that the offering from the Labour Party is very much closely aligned to that of the Conservative Party in terms of what they're offering. It's about kind of maintaining the status quo, stability, rather than actually proposing the sort of radical change that the country's crying out for, and that we need, in terms of some of the huge crises that we face. And no major party is offering that radical transformative solution to these crises yet. That's kind of our job as a movement, is to it's the role of grassroots groups up and down the country to kind of really make the case and showcase popular support that there is out there, for really much more ambitious action on climate, to stop the war and the genocide going on in Palestine, and so much more. So here's our movement vote strategy in a nutshell. It's about bringing different movements together to join forces on the issues that we care about, but joining forces to show sort of massive public organising effort to make the country's support for these issues and action on these issues really visible over the next 5 weeks. We really need all parties, all candidates, to feel strong pressure from the left flank. At the moment, it feels like there's this pressure, particularly on the Labour Party, coming from the right and from the mainstream media from the right. But how do we counterbalance that as a movement through our organising? So we want to show really, at the local level, at the national level, everywhere really, visible popular support for higher ambition when it comes to climate change, to Gaza, inequality, our public services, all the things that we care about in different movements, but that are so interconnected, right? These are all interwoven crises, and the solutions to them are interwoven. So let's work together and deliver really, a big mandate for much more radical change for whoever takes government and enters power on the 5th of July. It might sound a bit pie in the sky, it's quite ambitious, but it is possible, and it's what movements do all the time. And I want to introduce very briefly this concept of the Overton window. Basically, it's a way of thinking about. So there's, the window, named by someone, a political scientist called Overton. The theory basically goes that politicians will only act within the acceptable range of kind of what's popular, what's within that window, and it's the job of social movements and campaigners to widen the definition of what is politically acceptable and to create that widespread support for policies, for positions that were previously on the fringes, either end of the spectrum, seen as far too radical. But many of the policies and things that we now take for granted, whether it's votes for women or a minimum wage, having the right to a weekend, these were all once seen as unthinkable and radical. And through action, through public support, regular action, mobilization, organizing, the sort of organizing that grassroots groups do, they gradually became acceptable, then really seen as a sensible mainstream position, and so popular that politicians were forced to sort of move into that space and claim them and make policy around them. And that's what we've seen on so many issues. I'm just going to show two really quick examples. One to think about is just how quickly over the last year, as the energy price crisis hit after the war in Ukraine, and so many other factors, how quickly the idea of a windfall tax on big oil company profits went from something that was extremely sort of that climate groups and others had been pushing for years, but that was really seen as sort of way too radical, unthinkable, never going to happen. This idea, this principle that you make polluters pay, for the transition to renewable energy and to support people in fuel poverty, was really not seen as sensible. But through just in this space of essentially a year, less than a year, by making the case, by being really public out there, connecting the huge profits of oil companies, and making that visible at a time where essentially millions of people were having to choose between heating and eating, it suddenly became a sensible idea, and was public opinion shifted around that, and you saw the government having to move into that space. And yes, they created a windfall tax by another name called the energy profit levy. It's got lots of loopholes in it, but it was adopted by a Conservative government, by Liz Truss at the time. And now we see all the major parties, particularly Labour and the Liberal Democrats, kind of making big pledges around how they'll close those loopholes and tax big oil companies if they're elected. So huge shift and widening of that window. And one more example, which I think you'll all be familiar with, is just how quickly the position of the major political parties shifted in terms of their stance on, unconditional support for Israel right after October 7th, and for use of all sorts of tactics. But gradually, how that has, you've seen all the parties sort of falling over each other in that ridiculous debate a few months ago to, reword and redefine what a ceasefire looks like, and to, outdo each other in terms of um, trying to, yeah, look tougher. And that's because of the huge public pressure that has been created through Palestine solidarity organising up and down the country, week in, week out, over the last few months. But, started as something, that pro-Palestine organisations for years and years have been calling for boycotts, divestment, sanctions on Israel, for the end of sales of arms to Israel. That is now sort of a political reality, a conversation that's happening in the mainstream, still not policy, but we see that shifting, and that's because of organising. So the point is, in short, that the power of the people, if we choose to work together and move together, is much stronger than the people in power. And this little graphic here, I think, illustrates that really nicely. So just to summarise, I think issues motivate voters, but so whether it's climate change, what's going on in Palestine, whether it's the decimation of public services, the situation that's been unfolding over the last couple of years with workers in all sorts of public sectors striking for better pay and conditions. Those are the issues that motivate people to vote one way or another, but it's organising that actually kind of drives turnout, and both are going to be really extremely important over the next 5 weeks. And so here is our movement vote plan for how we make an impact on that and support grassroots groups to kind of contribute to that effort and push the much more radical demands that we have as movements into the mainstream, and force parties to kind of consider them. So first of all, 3 elements. First of all, we need to make those movement demands really visible, and we've got some tactics and resources around that. Secondly, every single candidate from every single party needs to hear from people that we care about those issues, and not just the usual suspects of, the regular members of our groups, but the wider population. So we need to make it really easy for people to be in contact with their parliamentary candidates. And thirdly, when we get closer to the 4th of July, how do we actually make sure that people turn out and vote? So we've got some creative tactics to kind of get people thinking and out to the polls with those issues sort of front of mind as they head into the ballot box. So step 1, making those movement demands visible. The idea is simple. It's that we get materials out in as many places as possible that kind of show that we care about these issues. So not just us in our groups, but our neighbours, our friends, our families, our workplace colleagues, in as many places as possible. It's about kind of helping people to show that they care, whatever the issue is. And we've got a range of poster templates, window poster templates that you can log into the Canva template and just edit with whatever you want that to be, that poster design, and then print off locally. We'd encourage you to really call on members of your groups as volunteers to help distribute these as far and wide as possible over the next 5 weeks. We don't have very long, but the more people start to see these things appearing in their neighbourhood, the more likely it is that those issues become sort of front of mind for them, and also that candidates start to see those as they're starting to kind of knock on doors. So we've got two sets of resources available. Window posters, as I said, that you can download and print off yourself. And we've also got some ready printed stickers, but you can also have the templates for those to print, many more of them yourselves. Just be careful not to spend more than £700 in any one constituency. That's the limit under electoral law. And we're making sure not to, break any of those limits from our end nationally as well. But all those resources, you can click on the links in the presentation and take a look at those and use them as you want. Secondly, how do we pressure all candidates and make them hear from as many people as possible on the issues that our movements care about? We think hustings are going to be really key to this. So these are sort of public events that all candidates are invited to hear and take questions from the public and lay out their positions and their answers on the issues that they are asked about. And so whether you're organising one as a group locally, or you decide, there is already something planned, how can you go along as a group and make sure that questions are asked on some of the key issues that you care about? So we've got lots of guidance available for both those options. If you want to organise a hustings, do you need to get a crack on? It's got 5 weeks basically, but it's not too difficult. And we've got a whole kind of step-by-step how-to guide available, which you can click on the link. We'll also be making some small grants available for any groups that maybe need a bit of support with, I don't know, whatever it might be, printing some flyers to promote it, or hiring a PA system for a large room, whatever it might be. And then we've also got a bespoke training session on the 5th of June if you'd like to come along to find out a bit more and talk with others. But essentially, this is a really good opportunity not to just take this on yourself as a group. There'll be lots of groups in your community thinking about organising hustings, and we really encourage you to collaborate across movements, across issues, to put on the biggest possible event that you can and make sure you're not clashing or competing with other groups, but working together to kind of multiply your impact and reach and your impact on the candidates. The other thing is that we have built a tool which basically enables you to set up an email template, a letter template, laying out, your group's position on the issues that you want candidates to take about into account, and letting them know, what you're thinking about as you head to the ballot box. And that then is a tool that, you can get anyone in your community to sign to be able to send a letter to all the candidates. The candidate lists are not yet published. They'll be finalised on the 7th of June. So we've got that tool ready to go, but we're just waiting for the last few email addresses of candidates to be confirmed. But if your group would like to have a tool like this available to sort of have an e-action to parliamentary candidates, it's not only a great way to get lots of people, contacting their candidates about the issues you care about, it's also a great way for you to grow your group and the list of supporters that you're then able to call on over the next few weeks, but well beyond this election moment as well. So follow the link there, get in touch if you would like access to some of the tools in our tech hub that can help you set up this kind of action. And finally, step 3, we actually need to mobilise people to get out and vote with those issues front of mind. And we think that big art is kind of a big part of the picture, and it can be a really powerful way to inspire people to vote, to think about issues. It's a powerful way for you as a group or coalition of groups in your area to share a bold message with your community, put it somewhere really public that so many people will see, and it's very hard to ignore. And there's a couple of examples here on this slide. That Kiss mural is one that appeared in Bristol by some artists that I know around the EU referendum campaign. Really thought-provoking. Made people sort of want to register and vote if they weren't up for that. The one below is a street mural that appeared in New York, actually, right outside Trump Tower, back in 2020, as the Black Lives Matter movement was kicking off. You don't need to go for anything on this scale, but you could. But the point is that it's really can be a really good opportunity to co-design and sort of work with different groups in your community to kind of get a sense of, what are the messages that will resonate, what's people's vision for a future with a new government, what do they want, and how do you turn that into some sort of really powerful visual message. So, good opportunity to work with creative people, artists in your community, whether that's chalking in the park or someone who's got a wall that they don't mind having a permanent mural painted. Whatever it is, like, how do we get messages out there that inspire people to think about um, the demands of your movement, of our movements collectively, and have that front of mind, as we get closer to the polls. And yeah, how do we get out? Actually, remind people to vote, and this is one of the ways. So we're going to have a couple of artivism trainings over the next few weeks. If you want to learn, the practicalities of how to make massive street art or massive murals, then come along on the 18th of June to the training that we're running. You can sign up again by scanning the QR code or just clicking on the links in the presentation. On the 3rd of June, so this is next week now, we've got another training which is just about how do you create wheat paste, which is a very simple technique for making sort of glue, so you can go out and like put up posters, big sort of posters or small posters, art basically around your community. Yeah, so those are the three tactics, or sort of prongs of the plan. Here's a timeline. It's obviously very short. We've only got 5 weeks as of today, as I record this, 30th of May. We're in this stage of kind of connecting with groups, getting resources out to groups, doing trainings on some of the key tactics that are going to be really helpful for grassroots groups over the next 5 weeks. But then as we enter June next week, it's really kind of all hands on deck with voter outreach, thinking about as many community events and opportunities to connect with people, to share materials, to have sort of action weekends where you're going out stickering or postering, flyering in your community, and planning those important hustings. And then, before we know it, it's going to be the 4th of July. And how can we, as I was just saying, get out the vote, but also, hopefully celebrate the positive impact that we've been able to have collectively. Final point is just that obviously this election is 5 weeks out of our lives, and then we get a new government, but that's not where things end. That's just the beginning, and we're going to need to hold our new MPs and ministers and government to account. And so I really want to encourage any group out there that's watching this to think about how this election can be an opportunity to build power that grows your group for the long term, for the long haul. And just introduce this idea of this onion. If you think of your community a bit as if it were an onion with many layers, and not everyone where you live is going to be as engaged as you are as a grassroots organizer, or group coordinator, or whatever your role is. There's people kind of on the outside of the onion who are just kind of observers, passive observers. You've then got people that are starting to, think about, oh, how am I going to vote? What matters to me? And a layer even deeper in than that and more engaged, you've got people that are willing to actually do something and, do a bit of volunteering, do a bit of stickering, create a mural, attender hustings, so the organizer layer, and then we've got groups like yours that are watching this right now, who are, the lifeblood really of making things happen and change in your community. And feeding the onion, there's obviously lots of support available from not just organisations like Tipping Point, but many of the sort of national networks and organisations out there that have groups around the country. And so we've designed these 3 tactics I just walked through to really sort of engage different layers of your community and help you absorb and think about how do you use those tactics to absorb new people, new energy into your groups and grow like the core of your group and your onion, as it were. So that maybe the murals, street art is something that is just going to be seen by passers-by, but is there a way that you can make sure that anyone who sees that is able to scan a QR code or something and join your mailing list or hear more about your hustings event? The movement vote materials, again, they're about kind of encouraging voters to actually like get out there and vote with those issues in mind. And then the hustings are very much, about collaboration between groups, showing your power as a group, and a really, really good opportunity, after an evening of lots of people questioning and hearing from their candidates on some of the key issues of our time. Really key opportunity for you to recruit new members and let them know about your next meeting, your next event, your next action, whatever it might be. We, as Tipping Point, focus exclusively on supporting grassroots groups because, we think you're the most important part of the movement. But also in the context of this election, you're not party political. You don't. Most groups, are not funded, and so you're very unlikely to. You have a lot of freedom basically over the next 5 weeks to engage in campaigning because there are spending limits in place, and there's regulated activity when we're in an election period. But more than those practical details, you are there day in, day out in your community. You're part of your community. You're often, you've often been active for many years, known and trusted. And at the local level what tactics and issues are really going to drive turnout. And as I said, this election is an opportunity to really build lasting relationships, not just between you and new members of your community who might become new members of your group, but also to build trust and connections and relationships with whoever is going to become your local MP, and you're going to need to keep influencing and holding to account over the next few years. I was going to say months, but it's for the long haul. Whoever gets elected is the one holding the seat, right? And with the opportunity to make new policies and change directions. So Tipping Point is here to support you in that. We can connect you with other groups in your area. As I mentioned, we've got a powerful tech hub full of tools that are free for any grassroots group to use. We do offer some small grants if you need a little bit of money just to make something happen in a bigger, bolder way. Please get in touch via our website, tippingpointuk.org. And our key bread and butter, I guess, is just training and supporting groups directly. So if you'd like to access any of that, please do sign up to the Movement Vote project. Start making a plan as a group about which of these tactics or resources you might want to use. Get involved in the trainings. And we really hope to be supporting your group to organise with hundreds of others around the country over the next 5 weeks and well beyond. So I hope you're in. And yeah, just encourage you to sign up. And if you are able, just always say this at the end of a training, but if you are in a position to be able to make a small donation to power any of this, we rely on donations and grants to provide all of the support that we do for grassroots groups for free. So we would really love anyone who feels they're in a position to do so to just give a small monthly donation. It makes a huge difference to our ability to reach more groups and do this work. Thank you, and good luck. And I look forward to hearing from you soon. Bye.